Joining us now, Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas, a key member of the House Oversight Committee and the House Judiciary Committee as well. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. What stands out to you from these emails that were publicly released by the committee today?
Yeah, so number one, it is clear that he knew what was going on, which I think that he's kind of alluded to that at some point in time, because the president said that he was trying to kick Ghislaine out of Mar-a-Lago because it seems like that's where girls were being recruited from based on information that we have. But more importantly is that he was having conversation, he being Jeffrey Epstein, with Michael Wolff, who is writing this book or trying to put together this book. And in real time, as Trump is running for his first presidential run, we hear or we see that he made it clear that he believes that he has leverage over Trump. And he said that a Trump regime would basically open up, this is me paraphrasing, this is not exactly what he said, but basically it'd be a free-for-all. And as we've seen, especially in this second term, it's been a free-for-all where Trump has absolutely pardoned some folk that we know are terrible, and we are waiting on him to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. I think that that's coming up soon, too. Yeah,
an important point indeed. Congresswoman, let's take a closer look at that email from Epstein where he writes to the author, Michael Wolff, saying this, and it's a direct quote, redacted victim, the name was redacted. Mar-a-Lago, Trump said he asked me to resign, never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Obviously, we don't have the full context here, but I'm curious, how do you read this specific email and what it means?
Yeah, I think that it is showing that he was well aware and he was trying to cover his tracks at that point in time. And I think that that's what you saw from Jeffrey. Obviously, it'd be better if we could talk to Jeffrey today, but it was very interesting that ultimately Jeffrey Epstein died sitting in prison during Trump's administration.
We had on Representative Marlin Stutzman earlier. He's a Republican, and he tried to make the case that President Trump is the most investigated person in the world, and he has not been accused of any criminal wrongdoing here. What do you make of that?
Listen, they will do and say anything to cover themselves. You know, I will admit that Donald Trump has been investigated more than the normal, but he just happens to be more corrupt and more criminal than any other president than we've had. I will point out he is the only president who has been convicted of 34 felony convictions that we've ever had in the Oval Office. So while we don't know exactly what crimes he may or may not have committed, just think of it this way. If you know that you didn't do anything, then why is it that you would be twisting members of your own party's arms, trying to get them not to release it? This would be exonerating. If you know that you are free and clear, then why not say, you know what, release the files? In fact, he campaigned on releasing the files because he didn't realize that anything that he was involved in whatsoever was involved in the files. But let me tell you something. Another thing that was said in that other email that he had with Michael Wolff was he was talking about if he wants to basically play hardball, we will make mention of the fact that he really has been on the plane, and I don't remember if it mentioned the island.
Let's actually put that email up just so our viewers can fully understand what it says. I just hope the control room can put this email up. It says, I think you should let him hang himself, and this is in response to a question of whether CNN would plan to ask Trump in a town hall about the relationship with Epstein. Epstein said, how do we craft an answer for him? And Michael Wolff says in this email, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime.
Yes.
That's the full email.
Yes, yes, yes. That is clear that Jeffrey Epstein had something to hang over his head. Why else or how else could you have a debt that you are able to? Now, exactly what it was, who knows, right? And that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of. But the fact that Trump does not want these files to be out, to me, says that he has more to hide than him actually being able to exonerate himself.
And then the other email talking about that we used initially, I'm just trying to find that email so I can be really precise here, but It talks about how Epstein is emailing Maxwell saying that Trump was with a victim at his house for several hours. This is an email from April 2nd, 2011. Republicans are saying that that victim is Virginia Giuffre. As you know, she died by suicide. She's been very outspoken. Jeffrey Epstein. Here's the email right here on your screen. She wrote a book, as you know, and she did not accuse him of any wrongdoing. What do you make of that, and can you confirm that?
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, it's redacted who the victim is, so I won't necessarily take the Republicans' word on who it is that's redacted. And I don't know why they would necessarily redact someone's name who is deceased at this point.
The Democrats did that, though. The Democrats redacted.
No. I understand,
Okay,
but I'm just saying, like, our biggest concern is to actually make sure that we are protecting victims. And obviously, she wrote a book. She told her truth. Whether or not she told everything, who knows? Again, another person that we can't talk to because we have yet another side around this. So I think that that's actually one of the things that we should talk about, is that the president has tried to call this all a hoax. I don't think you have this many people dying around a hoax. I don't think you have somebody trying to hide files around a hoax. We know that there's something there. We know that his own attorney general had to admit that he is in the files. But they are trying to hide stuff. The only reason that we have these emails is because we were able to get them from the estate. Not because the Department of Justice was releasing information, not because Kash Patel was releasing information, even though they've had subpoenas from the Oversight Committee for some time. Kash Patel continues to hold back information. So I thank God that there is somebody that still respects the law and still respects subpoenas in this country, but it's not the people that are in power to do it, the people that actually conducted the investigation. Imagine what we may discover if we got the investigatory information versus getting something from an estate.
Well, but we should also note that the head of the Oversight Committee is a Republican. It's Republican. The chairman is James Comer, and he is the one who is issuing these subpoenas.
Well, let's be clear about this.
Okay.
This is not something that he wanted to do. This was a subcommittee, remember? It has been the Speaker of the House who has consistently tried to avoid this by shutting down the House. So what the Speaker did is he sent us out on an early recess. But before we left, it was a subcommittee of the Oversight Committee that actually did the motion for the subpoenas, and the Democrats kept pushing, and some Republicans actually joined with the Democrats. This was not led by James Comer.
Like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't know if she's on that subcommittee.
Okay.
But Nancy Mace is on that subcommittee for sure. She's actually the chair of that subcommittee. This subcommittee, the ranking member is Summer Lee. So it was that subcommittee. So this was actually the tail wagging the dog. I just want to be clear about that. And ultimately, the chairman had a vote that was bipartisan, that was the majority, and he had to do it. But whether or not they have been like slow rolling this, there is no question about the fact that they have.
And you have had Marjorie Taylor Greene, I believe Thomas Massey. It's been some Republicans who want the full floor vote on this.
Yeah, we've got 4. 4 out of the 219 Republicans, yes, in the House. The rest of them seem to be okay with being complicit with protecting pedophiles.
You know, it's interesting. A CNN poll from last July showed that 50% of Americans were feeling dissatisfied about the amount of information released on the Epstein case. Did that have any influence at all on your decision to make these emails public today?
No, I mean, ultimately what's happened is, obviously, again, we've not been getting anything from the DOJ. Instead, it's been the estate of Epstein. And so as they've been turning things over, it takes staff time to review those documents and things like that to make sure that we've got something, number one, of value to the public. There's still additional information. I want to be clear. We got way more than 3 emails. But in their cursory review, they were able to say, okay, here are 3 emails that we think are of value. We do anticipate that there will be more that they will find that will be of value. They will go through the redaction process. They will also consult with the Republicans before we release anything. So it takes a little bit of a process. But I will say, again, that the estate seemingly has been more participatory than our own Department of Justice, who we actually oversee.
So where do you think all of this is heading?
Good question. I don't know, but hopefully it will start with the swearing in of Adelita Grijalva, as they have been avoiding that. Again, the House was shut down over that. I'm sure that the president has been making calls trying to get one of the four Republicans that did sign on to the discharge petition. I'm sure he is begging and threatening to get them to pull their names off of there. We know that they don't want to vote. We know that they called us in just for one day to work after we've been out since September. Again, we could be doing additional work. Even if this continuing resolution passes, we should be passing our appropriations bills. That's all the continuing resolution is for, it is in the meantime. But instead, it seems like they want to continue to be evasive so that they can slow walk this subpoena actually coming down.
All right, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, great to see you here in the Situation Room. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
Congresswoman-elect Adelita Grijalva is scheduled to be sworn in tomorrow, and then you expect, she has said she will sign the discharge petition, the Kana Massey discharge petition. Can you tell us when you would expect that vote to actually happen? Just explain to people who've kind of been waiting for this for so long. Explain when you would expect that Epstein vote.
Yeah, let me defer to Whip Clark and once and future Chairman Jim McGovern on that issue.
Thank you. It is long overdue that the Congresswoman-elect take her place, her rightful place, and be sworn in. So we are being told by the Republicans that that will happen now. They anticipate at 4 o'clock tomorrow before we begin debate on the rule. And it is just another one of those breathtaking split screens that as they are home and we are watching this suffering going on, that they have also decided to put off swearing in Congresswoman-elect Grijalva because they don't want her to sign a discharge petition that would force a vote on the Epstein files. So they don't want to give Americans health care, and they don't want to find justice for the survivors and victims of Jeffrey Epstein. It is an amazingly arrogant and dangerous statement that they are making to the American people about their own security.
And it should if she signs it tomorrow, it should ripen in early December, so we can expect a vote. I mean, that doesn't mean that the Speaker of the House might try to do some, shenanigans with the discharge petition. But if all goes the way we want it to go, early December.
It's unbelievable that for 7+ weeks, Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva was elected in late September decisively, has been denied the ability to serve more than 800,000 people in Arizona. And why is that the case? It's because Republicans are running a pedophile protection program. They are intentionally hiding the Jeffrey Epstein files. But those days are over, because as soon as Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva becomes Congresswoman Grijalva, her first act, as she's indicated, is going to be to sign that discharge petition. It's going to force a vote on the House floor, and the American people are going to get the transparency that they deserve.
A whistleblower is telling the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee that Jeffrey Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell is getting special treatment in prison and actively preparing a commutation application. In a letter from Congressman Jamie Raskin addressed directly to President Trump, Raskin says the whistleblower at Maxwell's new prison camp alleges that her extraordinary treatment includes customized meals delivered directly to her, visits to the prison exercise area after hours with a prison guard escort, and even access to a service dog in training to play with. This whistleblower also claims that one top prison official complained that he is, quote, sick of having to be Maxwell's B-word. I'll note that CNN has not independently verified the whistleblower's claims, but my source on this tonight is Congressman Jamie Raskin. And Congressman, on this whistleblower, I think a lot of people want to know what else they had to say to you.
Well, the whistleblower made clear that Ghislaine Maxwell is just in a completely different category than every other prisoner. She gets essentially room service behind bars. She can use the shower, she can use the gym whenever she wants to. She gets special treatment there. And unlike other prisoners who have to communicate with people outside of the prison through the unreliable and very slow mail system, she's actually getting messages sent through the warden to the people that she wants to communicate with, and the warden is actually offering her the opportunity to communicate on legal matters with people outside of the prison through the warden. So it's a pretty extraordinary situation. Of course, her presence in that camp facility itself is completely astonishing, given that they had never had a sex offender before, and sex offenders were not allowed in that camp. But she was allowed in, and she got in pretty much on an overnight basis after she met with Todd Blanche. She was subpoenaed by the Oversight Committee on July 23rd after a vote on July 22nd, and it was on July 24th that Todd Blanche, who had been Donald Trump's personal criminal defense lawyer, now working for the DOJ as the #2 person, went over to meet her, not in order to find out what she knew in terms of getting other people to be investigated who were involved in the $1.5 billion international child sex ring, but rather to find out what she would say about Donald Trump. And he pronounced himself satisfied when, she said that she had never seen Donald Trump in any compromising position with young women or girls. In fact, she'd never seen Epstein in some compromising position with underage women or girls. So anyway, he liked what he heard, and then suddenly she got this transfer.
Yeah, and we've asked the White House about that and Todd Blanche himself. But can I ask you on the whistleblower, did you speak to this person directly?
Well, I don't want to get into any more depth on it, but I would say this is a person who is in a position to know everything that was reported to us.
And do you think there's more
Absolutely
to come
in a
out
position to know
about how she's being treated or the treatment she's getting, I should say?
I do. Well, one of the other things that came up was that Ghislaine Maxwell is actively seeking a commutation, a pardon from the president right now. And I learned from somebody else, a Republican, that there's a lot of chatter that, he just pardoned 77 people who participated in different ways in his attempt to lie about the 2020 presidential election, his attempt to overthrow the election, and all of that some people are seeing as a smokescreen to get people talking about that, because none of these people are facing federal prosecution. They've already been disbarred or faced other kinds of charges. But all of that is really meant to distract people from what may be a pardon forthcoming for Ghislaine Maxwell.
With us now is Jennifer Freeman. She's an attorney who represents some of the survivors of Epstein and Maxwell. First of all, we should note CNN has not been able to independently confirm or deny the allegations. But Jennifer, what is your reaction to what Congressman Raskin is saying?
I've heard similar reports. I've also heard, and these are just, I can't confirm them either, reports that someone did complain about this preferential treatment and was promptly transferred to a higher security prison. I don't know if that's true, but that is what's being reported.
Raskin's letter also alleges that Maxwell is working on a commutation application to get out of prison. She would send this to Trump, presumably. Its exact contents and whether it's been submitted, that was not immediately clear. What's your message to President Trump about such a commutation application if he was being asked to commute her sentence? And how would your clients react if such a thing were to happen?
That would be very distressing, disgraceful, and upsetting if there's any effort to move forward with a suggestion of pardon or commutation. And it also doesn't make sense, Jake, because the grounds for commutation are typically things like wrongful conviction. Well, that's not going to apply here. A jury of her peers held she was a sex trafficker. Another example would be rehabilitation. That is also not going to be possible since she has not expressed any remorse. Another example would be that it's a nonviolent crime, and that doesn't seem to apply either. In fact, I took a look at the particular form that you'd have to fill out, your attorney would have to fill out. And one of the questions on the form was, what was your role in the offense? And do not omit facts or minimize your role. And do you accept responsibility for your criminal conduct? So she's going to have to, if she goes forward with this, she's going to have to address those issues.
Jamie Raskin, Congressman Raskin's letter also demands that President Trump make Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who before he was in government, he was a former personal attorney for Trump, available for a public hearing. Would you like to see that? Would you like Todd Blanche to sit for a public hearing?
I think that would be appropriate, given that he did interview her with very little knowledge, prior knowledge about the case. I think that would be fully appropriate to do that. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but I think it would be a good move.
What do your clients think is going on here? I mean, with Todd Blanche meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell, and then she gets transferred to a minimum security prison where there are all these accounts that she's treated unusually well, and anybody who complains about it is punished. Now she's talking about her sentence being commuted. What do the survivors think? Not about how awful it is, because I know they think that, but why this is happening.
They are deeply concerned that this is more of the cover-up of the Epstein files, which have not been released. Hopefully we're getting closer to that, but that's another aspect of the cover-up. I did ask some clients today if you'd like to hear their comments on this development or possible development of the commutation. I'd like to read a few of them, if that's okay.
Sure.
Here's Annie Farmer, who testified at the trial, at Maxwell's trial. Maxwell is a convicted sex trafficker and felon who's been accused of lying under oath. Her latest attempt to escape accountability makes it clear she has no remorse for her crimes. Any special legal treatment for her could not only be profoundly insulting, it would be downright dangerous for survivors. Liz Stein, who I know you've interviewed, said, as survivors, justice is the one measure of truth we have left. Ghislaine Maxwell was tried, convicted, and sentenced in a court of law, and her sentence should be upheld like anyone else's. So not happy. They're not happy, and they're very concerned that while the trajectory that they see developing in the public eye, where there's a movement towards the release of the file, there was a press conference to discuss that, the actual step to them whatsoever.
Okay, Jennifer Freeman, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Oh, I told the lovely women that I met that are victims of Jeffrey Epstein, they also say they are victims of another group of men, one that they're afraid to list publicly, and I told them that I'd be happy to read that name on the House floor for them. There hasn't been any movement forward on that. Of course, that's up to those women, and that's their decision. However, I remain steadfast in my belief is that all of this information should be released. No one should be protected. That's completely unfair. And I think it's a failure of administration that they never released it. No one has released this stuff. And so this is something that the American people are extremely angry about. I think it also played a part in Tuesday's election of why some people are just mad and they don't want to go vote, and it's not going away anytime soon.
Have you made your concerns about the Epstein files known to the president directly?
Yes, yes, I have. I don't share my personal conversations with the president, but I did express how important it is.
We should be clear, the president has never been accused of any wrongdoing related to Epstein's crimes. But what do you say to people, perhaps people in your own district, who feel like his administration isn't being transparent on this issue, and it brings a lot of questions up for them?
I don't really have to explain it. It's pretty much everyone across the board agrees, release the Epstein files. So this is something that I get calls into my office almost every day about. We track all the calls that come into my office, and I think that's extremely important, whether they come from the district or out of district, and it's all over the country. People just want this information released.
What are you seeing in terms of the calls and the volume there on that issue and other issues?
Epstein continues to be one of the top calls. The biggest call that we're getting right now is health insurance premiums. Of course, this is a crisis. I continue to demand a plan from my party. I've had pushback. Well, Marjorie, why don't you introduce your own bill? That may be something that I do. However, every member of Congress has a whole stack of bills that we would love to get to the floor for a vote, but we can't get anything to the floor for a vote unless the Speaker chooses to bring it. So, but I continue to push back. Democrats created this problem. Republicans have yet to solve it, and it's unfair to the American people. Across the board, people cannot afford health insurance.
Yeah, they need health insurance. Before I let you go, a final question. You've been very generous with your time. Thank you very much. The conservative activist and conspiracy theorist Laura Loomer, as you probably heard, she's now credentialed as a member of the new Pentagon press corps after the Defense Department placed rules on reporting that most news outlets refuse to agree to. Does that at all concern you?
No, I'll just say good luck with that.
Good luck to her being a Pentagon.
Good luck to the
person.
Pentagon.
Yeah. See how she does.
I think everyone knows what I mean by that. Well, we'll see. We'll see what her reporting shows.
I'm just curious what your perspective is overall on what the Pentagon did on that front. I mean, you have, done interviews with media outlets that you once deemed unfriendly or biased. You've also said you're a big believer in the First Amendment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Freedom of the press, freedom of speech. So do you disagree with moves like that to restrict the press?
I think our First Amendment is the most important, and I believe that's why it is the first. And I talk to anyone that requests an interview with me. And here lately, that's become incredibly important to me. I'm very tired of the toxic nature of politics here in Washington, but also across the country. Families have been torn apart. People have gotten divorced. It separates parents from children. And so I'm trying to lead by example, and I can only do my part, and that is to talk to everyone, and to talk to everyone in kindness. We don't all have to agree, but that's being an American, and thank goodness for that, right? But we have the freedom to do that, and our freedom of speech, our First Amendment rights, allows us to do that. And so my personal belief is, and I can only do it on my own, is that I need to set an example in the leadership role I am in by speaking nicely to everyone and sharing my viewpoints, but also listening to others.
And being available to talk about what's going on,
yes,
which is so important. We all believe in freedom of the press. It is so, so important.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Congresswoman. Appreciate you.
Yes, you've been outspoken about releasing the Jeffrey Epstein files to the public, including the names of individuals involved in his sex trafficking network. Now, Democrats have been calling for that too, along with some of the other Republicans, but most of your party is pushing back and stalling. Why do you think that is? Because if President Trump is not implicated in there, what is exactly being protected here?
I have no idea, but it seems like very rich and powerful men are being protected. And I will sign anybody's resolution, and I'll get on board with anyone's push to release those files, because this is about women, especially when they were teenagers, were victims of rape and sexual abuse by Jeffrey Epstein. And according to the victims, there's a list of men that they haven't released yet. They are afraid of lawsuits. They're afraid of it. And I said I would read the list for them on the House floor because I have speech and debate protection there. However, I also think that this is about all victims of human trafficking, children that are being molested or raped, any men and women that are held in some sort of sexual abuse situation. What does our government say to them if the government will not release the information on the most famous convicted pedophile in history? What is that message back? And I think it's horrendous. And then, you know what else? This has been a failure across administrations. It's not just this one. It was the Biden administration, then the Trump administration, then the Obama administration. It should have, all across, spanning this history, should have been released. And there's clearly powerful people are being
The
protected.
only one who really is caught is a woman on this, is Ghislaine Maxwell.
Right. What does that say?
The irony of that,
Yeah. But they say she's a monster, though.
Yeah, she's a monster.
They hate her.
Comes in all genders.
They hate her.
Yes.
Yep.
No, thank you to you. And Thomas Massey's also been great on pushing on this issue. Now, you mentioned you're notably America first, and you were even critical of President Trump's decision to take preemptive strikes on Iran. Right now, we're seeing these strikes on Venezuelan vessels in the Pacific, in the Caribbean, without congressional authorization. I think we both care about stopping the flow of illicit drugs. But do you think this is something the president can do unilaterally, or Congress needs to weigh in on?
Well, I just have to say, I have full faith and confidence in our great men and women in our military. And I believe that they have intel that we don't have, and they know what they're doing. However, I don't believe in regime change. I don't believe that we should be engaging in war, period. I'm totally against wars. I believe in fully protecting our borders and our people, but I don't think that we need to go out and attack other countries. I will say, though, fentanyl deaths increased in the past 5 years by 250% in my district alone. And drug overdose is devastating in a lot of, rural small towns that have lost a lot of economic opportunities. And so I am all for our Border Patrol and our military protecting our country and our people from drugs being smuggled into the country.
Now, Congressman, as we speak, there seems to be a significant divide on the right over whether to give a platform to noted white supremacist Nick Fuentes. Many prominent conservatives like Ben Shapiro, Senator Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, they've spoken out against amplifying him. You two have had a complicated relationship over the years, but at a moment when anti-Semitism is on the rise, where do you stand on this?
Well, first, I'm not anti-Semitic, but I am critical of the Israeli government.
Well, I just mean domestically speaking, because a lot of Nick Fuentes' words are, he hits every group, but very much just Jewish people in general, not Israel, Jewish people.
Well, number one, I don't have to agree with his words on attacking people like that. However, as a lawmaker, I think it's incredibly important that I defend our First Amendment for every single American. Of course, that does not apply to death threats or anything like that. However, I think the most important thing we can have as Americans is our free speech, and it can be speech that I either agree with or completely disagree with.
But it's something interesting you said. You said you're critical of the Israeli government, but you are not anti-Semitic. Most people now believe that if you criticize the Israeli government, you are anti-Semitic. Do you disagree with that?
Actually, I disagree with
Or I should say many people.
I would say that tide has completely changed. I think many Americans today see the difference is you can love Jewish Americans and you can love Jewish people and not be critical of people at all. And you can, I have the right to criticize a foreign government. And I can criticize as many of them as I want. And I can say October 7th was the worst thing and horrific, but I can equally say starving children and killing innocent people and children in Gaza is also horrible. And that's my opinion.
I'm wondering because, free speech is everything. And it feels like it's harder to do and to have in this country. Do you think it's a good idea for the military to be marching into our cities and towns right now because maybe people don't like the speech that they're hearing? How do we combat that and get back to going after the people who really are the problems?
Well, on free speech, I want to say that I think that all of us right here are doing a great job of exchanging our ideas and things that we believe in, and we're doing it in a very professional and kind way. And in my opinion, I think we need more of that in America. I really do. And a lot of people wanted me to come on the show and say nasty things and all of us to fight. They wanted all of us to fight.
Thank you for not doing that.
Oh my goodness, no. I didn't want to
around that. It's like 5 to 1.
She could handle it, but she didn't want to.
No, I didn't want to do that today because I believe that people with powerful voices like myself and like you, and especially women to women, we need to pave a new path. This country, Our beautiful country, our red, white, and blue flag is just being ripped to shreds, and I think it takes women of maturity to sew it back together. And I think that happens through free speech.
My lead source tonight is a Republican who has been calling for her own party to do more when it comes to bringing down prices. Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is here with me on Capitol Hill tonight, and thank you so much for being here. Can I first get your take on the federal judge's ruling saying that they've got to fund all of SNAP for these 42 million people who need it so desperately, obviously. Do you think that the ruling is absurd?
Well, I think it's the role of Congress, the House and the Senate, to fund the government. And I don't like I agree with the Vice President. I don't like the idea of judges taking over our role. However, to follow that up, I am absolutely appalled and disgusted at this standstill between Democrats and Republicans in the Senate. Caitlin, I voted to fund the government on September 18th. We passed the CR out of the House. And here it is today, November 6th, and this is still going on. And so it's true that the Democrats can fund the government, fund SNAP, and all of the programs at any time by voting for the same CR that they have voted for over and over. But at the same time, Republicans can use the nuclear option just like they did to get through the president's nominees. And they can go through the filibuster, and they can also fund the government. And I think this is hurting the American people. And I think it's hurting Congress and our ratings most of all.
Well, and we talk about these flight cancellation. Delta, obviously, in Atlanta, in your home state, has the biggest hub, the busiest airport in the world also. How worried are you about what it's going to look like for people starting tomorrow with these flight cancellations?
I think it's going to start looking like chaos, really. Many people are very worried about this. It's causing a lot of anxiety. Many people are already struggling, day to day, month to month with the cost of living. It has remained high. It was 9% inflation under Joe Biden in 2022. I give the Trump administration credit. They've kept it around 2.5% inflation, but that's still not helping Americans. And with this upcoming crisis with health insurance premiums skyrocketing, I think this is like a 5-alarm fire. And to me, it is incredibly embarrassing, and I find absolutely pathetic, really, that all of us are not here in Washington, D.C., working every single day to make sure that we can get the government open, but also solve the problem of affordability for the American people and come up with a good solution once and for all for health insurance.
Yeah, when the president says there's virtually no inflation and that grocery prices are going down, do you agree with him on that?
No, I go to the grocery store myself. Grocery prices remain high. Energy prices are high. My electricity bills are higher here in Washington, D.C. at my apartment, and they're also higher at my house in Rome, Georgia, higher than they were a year ago. So affordability is a problem, and I'm a mom. My kids are 22, 26, and 28. That's the generation I worry about the most, and they're having a very hard time. But when I go back home and I talk to many of my constituents, I'm hearing stories of not only are we having a really hard time affording groceries and rent and things like that, but I'm also hearing stories about people maxing out their credit cards just to afford their monthly expenses.
So when the president says that it's not that affordability hasn't been fixed, it's that people and Republicans aren't talking about it enough, that seemed to be a takeaway of his from Tuesday night's elections. Mm-hmm. You disagree with that sentiment? I
think Tuesday was definitely a referendum on how leaders in this country are leading. And I believe in America First policies. That's why I campaigned for President Trump and have supported him as long as I have, and I do support him. But I want all of my colleagues to come through in action in supporting America First policies. And I think the American people showed that on Tuesday. You're not going to convince them to go to the polls and vote by bailing out Argentina. And you're not going to convince them to go to the polls and vote by continuing to fund foreign wars and foreign countries and foreign causes. You're going to get them to go to the polls and vote when you show up to work and actually fix the problems that they face every single day.
And so, one thing that the president said there, and I'm sure a bunch of your constituents and a bunch of people you know in Georgia shop at Walmart and go there. The president keeps talking about the Walmart Thanksgiving meal where they put everything together that you buy for the holiday, that it's less expensive under him than it was under President Biden. But actually, when you look at it, it's because it has fewer items in it, and they're the Great Value brand. They're generic store brand. They're not, name brand.
Right.
Do you think that he is getting good information from those around him, or what do you think it is why he keeps repeating something that's not true?
Well, I think every president, no matter who they are basically in a cone of information by the people that they have working for them and are around them. So that could be the case here. And certainly I'll give credit to Walmart for offering lower prices. Americans definitely need that, and I'm sure the president was proud to talk about it.
When it comes to the government shutdown, you've talked about Democrats, you talked about the House passing the CR. Do you agree with the president that Republicans are bearing more of the blame than Democrats, it seems?
I do, because Americans know that Republicans control the House and the Senate, and they're looking and going, well, why are you shut down? And also, I'll go back to this. Senate Republicans can use the nuclear option and override the filibuster and open up this country today. And so I put blame on both Republicans and Democrats for basically Caitlin, I can't say it on CNN, but it's basically a you-know-what measuring contest between the men in leadership, and I think the country is sick and tired of it.
Well, on that front, you said something the other day that caught my eye. You said that there's a lot of weak Republican men in Congress. Who exactly are you referring to?
Many of my colleagues. I campaigned with President Trump and all over the country for years, really, and hardly any of them truly supported President Trump. But when it became clear that he was going to win, they ran out and bought their first MAGA hat and put it on. But I think we're seeing what's happening, and I like Mike Johnson a lot. He's a very nice man. But forcing Congress to stay home when the American people are showing up and working every single day, and now going to have to start dealing with flight delays, and women and children aren't getting WIC, and these SNAP recipients aren't getting their SNAP benefits, and federal workers are not getting paid. Even the Capitol Police that escort myself and others through the airport for security reasons, they're not getting paid. The list goes on and on and on. I do believe that when you have the responsibility of leadership, you need to take that very seriously. And unfortunately, I'm not seeing that right now.
Speaker Mike Johnson actually addressed your criticism of him today in an interview. I want you to listen to what he had to say about this.
I'm not unaccustomed to hearing criticism from Marjorie. We have intense fellowship, as we see in the Deep South, Stephen. And she knows I've got an open door. She can come in and talk with me anytime. But, she goes on these shows. She likes to get the big interviews, and that's fine. Everybody has the right, But I will tell you this. I'm in constant contact with all the House Republicans. And the reason we've not brought them back yet is because we did our job.
I heard from the speaker today, and he asked me if I wanted to talk about health insurance policy ideas. I said yes, and I said I'll have my staff reach out to yours and find some time on your schedule. Unfortunately, they replied back he's not available until next week. I'm not here in Washington next week. I have talked with him through text messages and on our weekly conference calls. We have a weekly conference call. But my demand to my speaker that I voted for, so I think I get to make these demands, is that he brings our House back into session. We get back to work on our committees, passing our bills, passing the agenda the American people voted for, and return to business. But also, I want a health insurance policy plan for this country. Democrats passed the ACA back in 2010. They passed the tax credits in 2021. They're expiring now, and every single American can tell you health insurance is absolutely unaffordable, and it's a crisis. And so I will continue to demand these plans. People push back on me and say, why don't you introduce a bill yourself? I certainly can do that, but the only person that brings the bills to the floor is the Speaker of the House.
and every member of Congress will tell you that we've got stacks of bills that we would love to get a vote. And I don't think that would solve anything.
Do you have health care policy proposals to bring to Mike Johnson?
I have been spending the last month talking to many experts in the field, but Mike Johnson keeps saying that he's got pages and pages of policy ideas. He tells that to the press every single day. Well, he hasn't presented any of those to our conference, and everyone knows that there is no way to pass a package of bills or even one bill unless you build consensus among your members, and that hasn't happened yet.
He told us when we had him on the show a few weeks ago that if the government reopened tomorrow, and this was 2 weeks ago probably, that Republicans would have a health care plan. Do you believe that?
No, because I haven't seen it yet.
And earlier you praised former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to my colleagues, Wolf Blitzer and Pamela Brown. It might surprise a lot of people to hear you praise her time as Speaker. Do you think Speaker Johnson fights as hard for your side as she fought for hers?
You know, I praised her because she did fight for her side. Do I agree with her? No. Did I vote for her bills? I did not. However, I respect her greatly because she accomplished more for her party than I've seen our Speaker accomplish for ours.
If there's a silver lining to the Democrat shutdown deal, it is that Speaker Mike Johnson is forced to undissolve the House of Representatives after 7 straight weeks of recess. And with the House back, Speaker Johnson must swear in Arizona Democratic Congresswoman-elect Adelita Grijalva tomorrow. She says she will provide the 218 signature on a discharge petition to force a vote on releasing the Jeffrey Epstein file, something Johnson has been pretty desperately trying to avoid throughout the shutdown. This all comes as we learn from a whistleblower that the only person involved in Epstein's crimes to ever be convicted of engaging with those crimes is Ghislaine Maxwell, now plans to ask Trump for a commutation after receiving weeks of, quote, concierge-style treatment in prison. Congressman Ro Khanna is a Democrat of California. He and Republican member Thomas Massie filed the discharge petition in September. Congressman Khanna joins me now. Congressman, I guess, one of the things I learned during the course of this is that a discharge petition, people can take their names off it before it hits 218. But once it hits 218, it is locked. And I wondered how much jockeying was happening behind the scenes. Is it your expectation that tomorrow Congresswoman Grijalva gets signed in and it gets to 218?
Yes, but it's not done until it's done. And there's a tremendous amount of White House pressure on a couple of the people, in particular, the Republicans who signed the petition. My expectation is it holds. Adelita Grijalva signs it. And then we have a vote 7 days later. December 3rd is when we're targeting for a vote of the full release of the Epstein files.
How central do you think your efforts to force that vote were in the response of Mike Johnson taking this truly unprecedented step of essentially keeping Congress out for 2 months?
Unfortunately, it was the cause of it. I mean, it pains me because people are going without food stamps, people are going without pay. All of that could have been resolved if he had just had Congress in session, because we would have been paying the troops, we would have been extending SNAP. And here's the dispositive fact, Chris. If it wasn't because of Epstein, he could have still shut down Congress and just sworn in Adelita Grijalva. The fact that he didn't swear her in is the reason that he shut this thing down.
I want to ask you about some of this reporting we've seen about Ghislaine Maxwell. And I have to say, read a lot of news stories every day. My blood pressure stays pretty regulated because there's a lot of bad stuff happening. But the reporting about Maxwell made me pretty personally angry. I mean, this is the original sin of the Jeffrey Epstein saga, is that he was caught preying on girls and was cut a sweetheart deal that allowed him to keep doing. The only person now who has been brought to account for those crimes, Ghislaine Maxwell, was taken out of the prison she was in after she gave an interview to the president's personal lawyer. A waiver had to be signed by the Department of Prison to put her in a minimum security prison, and this is what's happening there. Maxwell has received customized meals personally delivered to her cell, after-hours time in a private exercise area, and access to a service puppy. Maxwell was also afforded private meetings with visitors arranged by the warden, complete with snacks. This is Jamie Raskin, your colleague, writing a letter about this to Trump. The deference and servility of Ms. Maxwell have reached such preposterous levels that one of the top officials of the facility has complained he is sick of having to be Maxwell's bitch. What do you make of this reporting?
Well, it doesn't just get your blood boiling, Chris. You know whose blood it got boiling is the survivors, because I was with them in a press conference in front of the Capitol, and I'll be with them with Thomas Massie in front of the Capitol again next week. And we were saying, look, let's talk about the Epstein file release. Let's talk about all the rich and powerful men who were involved in this abuse. And they would keep bringing up this Maxwell pardon because they said Maxwell was involved in their abuse. And it was an affront to them that someone who sexually abused them was going to get special treatment or a pardon from the president. Anyone who talks to these survivors will be outraged that this is even being considered.
How hard is this White House going to fight this if in fact, 24 hours from now, that discharge petition signed? How much pressure is going to be brought to bear on that House on the vote?
There's going to be tremendous pressure, and that is because I believe 50 to 60 Republicans could break, and that would be the first day of Donald Trump being a lame duck. Look, this is about our politics. Are we going to be for the forgotten class of Americans or for the Epstein class? And Donald Trump suddenly is going to be part of the swamp protecting the Epstein class, and he's going to have a chunk of the MAGA base with every Democrat saying we're for working class Americans, forgotten Americans. That's why they are so fearful of this vote.
I want to ask you about something you said, I think, earlier today about the end of the shutdown deal. I just interviewed the House Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries. I think you said that you think Senator Schumer should be replaced or resign as Senate Democratic leader. Why?
He was unable to protect health care. I mean, we did nothing as premiums are going to skyrocket for 20 million Americans. Look, this is why I ran for Congress, for national health care, Medicare for all. That's what we need to do with a broken system. But at the very least, we can make sure that we have some tax credit extensions so that people's premiums don't spike from $44 a month to $2,600 a month. That is what's going on with real people that I've talked to. It's outrageous.
Do you think there's any hope for the next iteration of this fight? I asked this of Congressman Jeffries. I don't think it had quite sunk into me because the shutdown was going on so long. The CR is going to go through January. I mean, that's going to be here very soon. So it's well, what are we going to do then? What's going to go on then?
Well, I do think that that's another opportunity to make this fight, and that's why I've said let's have some fresh blood and new leadership. Look, Chris, I want a permanent extension of the affordable tax credits, but we could have had at least a one-year extension. Representative Michael Lawler, a Republican, has floated that. Kevin Kiley, a Republican, has floated that. We could have had negotiations on eligibility. I don't think there should be negotiations about eligibility, but I would have been willing to compromise. What I'm not willing to do is say we get nothing and that 20 million people get shafted. And then they have all these pundits saying, well, we made health care an issue. Really? That's why we're in politics, to make it a talking point? How about actual relief for people whose premiums are going to go up?
Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you so much for your time tonight.
There's new internal turmoil at the Justice Department today, with details from MSNBC's exclusive reporting. The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, a Trump appointee, called a rare division-wide meeting yesterday after the resignation of 2 prosecutors. A source familiar with internal concerns among career prosecutors tells MSNBC those prosecutors are afraid of being asked to work on a case that President Trump says should lead to the arrests of some of his most high-profile adversaries, among them former President Barack Obama and former CIA Director John Brennan. Joining me from the White House with his exclusive reporting is MSNBC's Vaughn Hilliard. Barbara McQuaid is here, an MSNBC legal analyst and former U.S. attorney. Independent journalist Philip Bump joins me here on set. Vaughn, walk us through your exclusive reporting.
Yeah, along with our colleague here at the White House, Laura Barone-Lopez, we have from sources that down in the Southern District of Florida, Jason Redding Quinones, he is the U.S. attorney who was picked by Donald Trump to lead that office in Miami this past August, that he is effectively overseeing what is amounting to a sprawling investigation, a conspiracy investigation. And this is important. Folks are going to continue to hear about this in the months ahead. It is the idea that the Biden administration, the Obama administrations, individuals who were law enforcement and intelligence community officials were seeking to undermine the candidacies and presidencies of Donald Trump over effectively the last 8 years. And what is underway is at least 30 subpoenas were sent out on Friday by this office. But just before the number 3 in the office signed off on those subpoenas, 2 junior assistant U.S. attorneys had resigned. I am told that at least one of them was asked to do something that was outside of their realm of comfortability and what they believed would violate their ethical responsibilities. Now, it's worth noting that the number 3 in the office, the executive assistant U.S. attorney, was the one who signed off on those subpoenas. Usually you don't see somebody in a leadership capacity, sort of like how Lindsey Halligan in the Northern District of Virginia signed off on the indictments of Tish James. It's uncommon to see somebody that is not a line prosecutor who is ultimately overseeing such an investigation. I'm told that other prosecutors in the office are on, quote, pins and needles because they fear that they are going to be asked to take part in this investigation that the president has been very explicit that he has said should lead to the arrest of President Obama, James Clapper, John Brennan, even people like Hillary Clinton. It is a vast investigation here, in one in which down in the Southern District of Florida is causing concerns over prosecutors being asked to do the job that they do not feel comfortable is based in substance and based in one in which they should be actually asked to go and move forward with such not only subpoenas but potentially indictments.
Vaughn, thank you for your reporting. So, Barbara, the executive assistant U.S. attorney, Manolo Rebozo, signed at least some of these 30-plus subpoenas. Is that standard protocol?
It's not. As Vaughn said, typically you would expect the line prosecutors who are handling the case to be the people who would sign subpoenas. It sounds, though, like this is some sort of special project that they're putting together, some sort of special unit. Executive U.S. attorneys sometimes have in their portfolio special projects. So it sounds to me like this executive U.S. attorney is going to be leading whatever this effort is into this conspiracy investigation. But I do think it's noteworthy that this is not being handled the way a routine case would be handled for a violation of the law. Instead, it is being handled as a special case with a high-level executive member of the team handling this. The other thing that I thought was noteworthy about the reporting is that the grand jury to be impaneled is going to be in Fort Pierce, Florida. That, of course, is the district, the portion of the district, the Southern District of Florida, that has one and only one judge, and that judge is Aileen Cannon. I don't know that we should be suspicious of everything Judge Aileen Cannon does, but we do know that her track record in the Mar-a-Lago case with the documents was first to impose some really extraordinary hoops for the prosecutors to go through at the time of the search, and then, of course, the dismissal of the case finding the special counsel regulations to be unconstitutional, contrary to every other court that's looked at it. So I think there is reason to be very concerned about the irregularities that are occurring in this office.
Well, Philip, the source who's familiar with the subpoenas calls them performative, but even if they are, is that the point? There have been those suggestions before that it's really about creating a public impression and reinforcing a narrative more than necessarily building a strong legal case.
Yeah, I mean, normally we want to be careful and say, well, we can't say for certain. I think all of the evidence here points to this being them on a fishing expedition, right? That they are trying to figure out a way in which they can impugn these people. But I think it's really important to note this is a fishing expedition in already fished waters. There was already a probe into this when Donald Trump was first president that was run by Bill gold bar. He assigned a special counsel, John Durham, to actually look at all this stuff. And they tried really hard to make a case, particularly against Hillary Clinton, to say that she had contrived the Russia probe. And it did not work. They did not obtain any actual convictions in that case. They did obtain an indictment. But there's no evidence that there's anything here. And the fact that they have taken this case and moved it to Florida and moved it under the jurisdiction of Cannon and had these prosecutors who weren't comfortable doing it, so they had the superseding person sign these documents, all of these things suggest that what they're doing is they're retrying to get these people in trouble for these things. That this has been an obsession of Donald Trump since before he was president the first time. He was calling this a witch hunt before he even became president in 2017. This is clearly a bug that's been under his skin for a long time, and this is the way in which they're trying to address it.
I mean, Barbara, if you have people who are career prosecutors who are suggesting that they have to resign because they're being asked to do something that they are not comfortable doing, what is the big picture impact within DOJ?
I think that's deeply concerning. You know, prosecutors at the Department of Justice are trained, they're hired, and they're instilled with the idea that their job is to do justice, not to engage in partisan politics, and to seek indictments or even grand jury subpoenas only when they believe there is actual factual predication of a crime having been committed. The fact that we've got two people resigning, of course, we don't know all the details, but it does seem to indicate they're being asked to do something contrary to that pledge that all prosecutors make when they join a U.S. attorney's office. And so I think the reason we're hearing that other prosecutors there are on pins and needles is that they're worried that they might be next and asked to do something. People love these jobs. These are highly sought after jobs. They work their whole career to get these jobs, and they serve and are proud to walk into court every day and say their name on behalf of the United States of America. It is a terrible tragedy to lose one of these jobs, but that's what it takes if you are asked to do something that is illegal or unethical. And so I think that what we could see is a purge of all of the people who are good and of great integrity, who will leave rather than do what they're being asked to do. And then the problem, of course, is who replaces them? People who are willing to do these tasks.
Well, it also brings up, Philip, the very real question for the American public and their own security and the idea of justice, putting people away who deserve to be put away. Right. And if you have people who don't have the experience, people who maybe don't even have the credentials, have never even worked, for example, in criminal law before, and those people are focused largely on things that may have to do with retribution, where does that leave us?
I mean, the scale of the damage that's been done to trust in the Justice Department and federal law enforcement over the course of the past 10 years is hard to measure, right? I don't know that any of us ever expected. I mean, certainly when Donald Trump was reelected last year, he ran on this platform of retribution, and he said he was going to go after his enemies. And, eventually there would be some hemming and hawing, like, well, he's not, his allies would say he wasn't really going to do it. But this is what he's doing. And, the people who he's appointed to run the Justice Department and the FBI, the fact that they are taking these actions now, the damage that's being done is so robust. And to Ms. McQuaid's point, like it's internal as well. The fact that they are reshaping these organizations so that moving forward, that damage will linger. We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know how bad the damage is going to be, but it's significant.
Vaughn Hilliard and Philip Bump, thank you both. Barbara McQuaid, please stick around.
Us now is Arizona Democratic Congresswoman-elect for at least a few more hours, Adelita Grijalva. Great to have you back on the show. So you posted that you heard from Minority Leader Jeffries and from media reports that you would finally be sworn in. You didn't hear this from Speaker Johnson?
Speaker Johnson's office, and Speaker Johnson has never communicated with me directly at all throughout this entire process. So it's been Leader Jeffries and Minority Whip Clark that have continued to keep me informed, and respectfully, just literally reporters asking what's happening. That's how I found out what's going on.
So you're hoping this swearing in happens, but you haven't been told officially by the Speaker's office it's going to.
No, but we did get confirmation from Minority Whip Clark, who sent out the agenda. It looks like they're asking everyone to be there at 4 o'clock, that I would be sworn in first and then able to vote right after that.
You are driving to Phoenix from Tucson, where you live, to take a direct flight to D.C. because connecting flights, which you'd have to take from Tucson, are more likely to be canceled. Are you sure you can get to the Capitol?
I hope so. I mean, I'm here in Phoenix now. I just went to a veterans event in Tolleson and have been in this area and stayed here through the day. I do believe that even if I can't make the direct flight that we're hoping for, there are a lot of other backup opportunities. I'm just hoping to get there directly and not have to go through any of the hubs, because I worry about those delays. Just many of the members of Congress right now are having a hard time getting back, especially those of us who live so much further away from DC.
So you wrote in a statement that, quote, while I am eager to get to work, I am disappointed that one of my first votes will be on a bill that does nothing to protect working people from skyrocketing health care insurance premiums. Do you think these Senate Democrats who broke with their own party to end the shutdown are making a mistake?
So my problem fundamentally is the ACA has been around since 2010. Republicans have done nothing but criticize that entire system for 15 years. If they don't like it, come up with a solution. But for us to punt it to December, where half of the month, most of us are going to be on like a district, vacation period because of the holidays, why do we continue to have these little CRs? They're like little Band-Aids, as opposed to actually making a budget that is workable and allowing us to continue to work on the things we need to. This has been continuous with this administration.
That yes vote by those 8 Democratic-aligned senators has ignited real fury in the Democratic base and among their own Democratic colleagues on Capitol Hill. Senator Edward Markey of Massachusetts said, the American people want us to stop the heist, not drive the getaway car. Do you share that sentiment?
I'm very frustrated. I have to be honest. What was approved does nothing to ensure that we're going to have affordable health care for anyone. The American people are left out of this. And even though Thune has made the commitment in the Senate that there's going to be a vote, Speaker Johnson has sidestepped and danced around that question every time he's been asked.
But there are many Republican members of Congress who also think these subsidies are astronomically high. I mean, without these subsidies, that the cost of health care for the Obama ACA is astronomically high. Among them, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has been saying repeatedly and publicly, we have got to do something to extend these subsidies. Might you have enough Republican support, do you think, or win more as more and more people open their bill for their insurance premiums and see that they're doubling or even tripling? Might they be calling their congressmen and urging their Republican congressmen to support extending the subsidies?
But this is not a secret. It was in that horrible bill that they all voted for. So yes, my hope is that people are going to hear from their constituents and say, you know what, people can't afford quadruple their health care rates. I mean, that's crazy. Minimally, the ACA subsidy should be extended until Republicans can come up with a better solution.
Well, you were on the show last week. You said that it was possible that Speaker Johnson was delaying swearing you in because you plan to vote yes on ordering the DOJ to release the Epstein files. Your vote would be the final vote needed to get that bill over the line. When are you planning to cast that vote?
As soon as possible. I'm going to sign that discharge petition as soon as possible. And I do believe that did play a role.
You do believe it played a role?
Oh, absolutely.
Why?
Because there was absolutely no other reason why I should be delayed. I was elected 5 days before the shutdown. There was a whole freshman class in 2019 that was sworn in during the shutdown. All of the excuses that Speaker Johnson has thrown out there have been debunked by things that he's even done. So there is no other legitimate reason for the delay in my swearing in. It had nothing to do with the shutdown, nothing to do with what's happening in the Senate. Those two things are not connected.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.
We do not want this to happen. I beg President Trump not to do anything that she's requesting. I'm not surprised she's trying to get out because she still has a lot of power and she still has a lot of secrets. So I'm not quite sure how much weight that holds.
Apart from Virginia, you say another friend of yours was forced to have sex with Andrew?
Nothing happened to me. I just had a girlfriend during those years that she came to me really upset and said that Jeffrey had made her go into a room and have sex with someone that I thought was the prince. So that's the reason why I started speaking out, because of what I saw on the island with Virginia and also what my friend told me.
And we asked Andrew Mountbatten Windsor for a response. We haven't heard back. He has previously denied all wrongdoing. Ghislaine Maxwell is reportedly planning to formally ask Donald Trump to cut her 20-year prison sentence for child sex trafficking, according to documents obtained by Democrats on the U.S. House Judiciary Committee. Maxwell helped paedophile Jeffrey Epstein sexually abuse young girls. She was friends with Andrew Windsor. He used to be a prince, as you know, and it was she who introduced Andrew to Epstein. That news comes just hours after a deal was struck that means the shutdown of the US government, which has dragged on for over a month, could soon be nearing an end, potentially bringing with it the release of the so-called Epstein files. I've been speaking to a survivor of Epstein, Lisa Phillips, and asked for her reaction about that reported Ghislaine Maxwell request.
Speaking on behalf of survivors, so many of my survivor sisters that were affected deeply by this woman, we do not want this to happen. I beg President Trump not to do anything that she's requesting. She's a convicted felon, and unfortunately, she's the only one serving time right now. There's many other people that haven't been held accountable, but she is serving time, and she needs to be held accountable for what she's done.
She was sentenced to 20 years in prison for helping Epstein sexually abuse young girls for child sex trafficking charges. She has tried to get her appeal heard by the US Supreme Court. That hasn't happened. Why does she keep trying, do you think?
Well, I believe she keeps trying because she has still the power to affect a lot of people that are in power, and that could really make what she wants come true for her. I still feel like she's capable of doing that, unfortunately. That's just kind of what wealth and power buys you. She doesn't go to the same prison as everybody else. And from what I've been hearing, she's been petting dogs and hanging out in the fresh air and having tea parties. And it's really infuriating to a lot of us survivors to hear that.
That's interesting that you say you've been hearing that, because it is also reported that she has written an email to a relative obtained by NBC News that now she's been moved to a minimum security prison after having 2 meetings with the Deputy Attorney General. She is said to have written, "I feel like I've dropped through Alice in Wonderland's looking glass. I'm much happier here and more importantly safe."
Wow. I mean, she's so happy there. That's really great. But I've spent a lot of time with her victims, and they have had a lifetime of heartache, and they haven't had so many happy moments when they reflect back on what she has done to them. So we're still standing our ground and trying to do whatever we can to make sure that she stays where she is and she doesn't get all these perks.
How does it make you feel that she is reportedly getting these perks and that she's trying to get out before the 20 years is up?
I'm not surprised she's trying to get out because she still has a lot of power and she still has a lot of secrets. So I'm not quite sure how much weight that holds, but from the survivor standpoint of knowing hundreds of girls that were affected by her, it's just something that we're going to keep fighting for, to make sure that President Trump doesn't give her what she's asking for.
You were 21 when you met Epstein, and you say you were sexually assaulted by him. It was only after his death in 2019 and when you met other survivors that you started to realise what he had done to you. Is that how it happened for you?
Well, when it comes to serial predators, when they groom and manipulate and abuse hundreds of people, hundreds of victims, you don't really understand what's happening to you because it's very subtle, the grooming process, and you don't understand why someone's being really nice and giving and then someone's also abusing. There has to be good with the bad. And a lot of times you fall into a bit of a Stockholm syndrome. A lot of the survivors have talked about the fact that Jeffrey did wonderful things for us or our families, and that's kind of the way that you don't understand it when you're younger until you start speaking out and talking to other survivors from the same predator. Then you start to understand, my goodness, it wasn't just myself. It wasn't just me. This wasn't just happening to me. It was happening to you and you and you as well. And that just, it's kind of sickening. So there is a learning process when it comes to how these predators groom.
Since you last spoke to Newsnight, Andrew has been stripped of the title Prince, and that was a call actually on our programme from Virginia Giuffre's family. He is now known as Andrew Windsor. He's also been summoned to appear before the Oversight Committee in the US. You have previously met him. Can you tell our audience about that?
Well, the reason why I spoke out in 2019 and 2020 is because Virginia Giuffre spoke out about this person, and I had seen him on the island when I was first brought there in 2000. And so I just wanted to support her. I mean, naively, when I started speaking out, that's all I wanted to do was just support her because I believed her. And I had some experiences back then that supported what she was saying. Her accusations, I believed, were true. So my story started in 2019, basically with Prince Andrew at that time, and just wanting to support the survivors and speaking out against him. So it's been 6 years that it's taken for him to be stripped of that title. We're all very happy for that. I mean, it's not complete justice yet, but that definitely is a life-changing thing for him, and it's the first step in the right direction.
Would you urge him to appear before the US Oversight Committee?
Oh, yes. I think that'll be very revealing.
Did Virginia Giuffre ever talk to you back then about what she said had happened to her with Andrew?
After Virginia spoke out, I contacted her, and I wanted to speak to her and tried to figure out if our dates lined up, because I wasn't sure. I remember there was a very young blonde girl in the pool with an older gentleman, and I was introduced to that man later on as the prince. So I was just like, I want to, you know, be there for you. I remember seeing you on the island. Was that you? And so we started talking about the dates and the flight logs and just seeing if we were there at the same time. And I spoke to her because I said, oh, I have a friend who something similar happened to. And, you know, I just was not prepared to talk about my story. I just wanted to support her because of what I felt I saw. And I didn't like the fact that I didn't like what was going on back then. So
Understood.
I was just thinking I was doing the right thing.
Yeah. And so, apart from Virginia, you say another friend of yours was forced to have sex with Andrew?
Well, nothing happened to me. I just had a girlfriend during those years that she came to me really upset and said that Jeffrey had made her go into a room and have sex with someone that I thought was the prince. So that's the reason why I started speaking out, because of what I saw on the island with Virginia and also what my friend told me.
Lisa Phillips, thank you so much for talking to Newsnight again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we asked Andrew Mountbatten Windsor for a response. We haven't heard back. He has previously denied all wrongdoing.
Live to Capitol Hill here tonight, where House Democrats have just revealed that Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell here, will and does plan to ask President Trump to commute her 20-year prison sentence. Trump previously said he'd, quote, have to take a look at any application submitted. An attorney representing some of Jeffrey Epstein's victims calling that possibility, quote, disgraceful.
The grounds for commutation are typically things like wrongful conviction. Well, that's not going to apply here. A jury of her peers held she was a sex trafficker.
Earlier this year, Maxwell in a deposition said Trump wasn't involved in any of Epstein's crimes immediately after she received a questionable prison transfer. And a whistleblower now alleging she's receiving some special treatment while behind bars, including customized meals hand-delivered to her cell, private meetings with visitors who can bring in a laptop computer, and that she's been allowed to play with service animals.
Britain's Prince Andrew, a prince no more, his brother King Charles officially starting the process of stripping Andrew of his remaining royal titles and evicting him from the royal estate in Windsor. It's the royal family's strongest response yet to the disgraced prince's links to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
It's a moment about justice, right?
Epstein survivor Danielle Binsky responding to the news Thursday.
I think it was incredibly hopeful for survivors, and it's a glimmer of hope that we haven't seen in a really long time, if ever.
The years-long controversy over Andrew's friendship with Epstein intensified after the release of a posthumous memoir by Virginia Giuffre, who alleged Andrew sexually assaulted her when she was a teenager. Andrew has repeatedly denied all allegations against him. He claimed he never met Giuffre, who died by suicide in April at the age of 41. On Thursday, her family released a statement reading in part, quote, "Today, an ordinary American girl from an ordinary American family brought down a British prince with her truth and extraordinary courage." Giuffre's brother also spoke out on Thursday.
I think this is a big sense of vindication for her from not just the general public, but from the king himself to say, I stand by survivors.
Buckingham Palace also released a statement reading in part, quote, "Their Majesties wish to make clear that their thoughts and utmost sympathies have been and will remain with the victims and survivors of any and all forms of abuse." I'm Reed Binion reporting.
Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, is working on a presidential commutation application and getting special treatment in prison. Now, those are new allegations from a whistleblower, according to Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin, ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. He's written a 6-page letter to the president demanding that he, quote, provide answers for the American people and all the survivors harmed by Ms. Maxwell's conduct. She was moved to a lower security prison in Texas in August after being interviewed by the president's former personal attorney turned Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. More now from CNN's MJ Lee.
Convicted child sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell is hoping to reverse her fortunes with help from President Donald Trump.
Would you consider a pardon or a commutation for Ghislaine Maxwell if she cooperated?
It's something I haven't thought about. It's really something. It's something I'm allowed to do it.
Trump, when asked, has repeatedly not ruled out the possibility of leniency for the late Jeffrey Epstein's notorious right-hand woman. According to a whistleblower who is making new allegations, Maxwell is currently working on filing an application for a commutation.
She's basically being treated like an honored guest at a Trump hotel rather than a federal prisoner.
Congressman Jamie Raskin, the House Judiciary Committee's top Democrat, says the whistleblower also claims that Maxwell is receiving preferential treatment at the prison camp in Bryan, Texas, where she's currently serving out her 20-year sentence. The favorable concierge-style treatment is said to include private meetings with visitors, including snacks and refreshments for her guests, Maxwell's guests being allowed to bring in computers during their visits, and the camp's warden personally helping to send emails on Maxwell's behalf. Maxwell's lawyer and the Justice Department did not comment.
Did you ever observe President Trump receive a massage?
Never. These new revelations coming less than 4 months after Trump's Deputy Attorney General and former personal lawyer Todd Blanche met in person with Maxwell at her previous prison in Florida.
I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. In the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects.
During the course of 2 days of interviews, Maxwell telling Blanche that she had never seen Trump behave inappropriately. Trump, who was friends with Epstein decades ago, has not been accused of any wrongdoing related to Epstein.
Ghislaine answered every single question asked of her over the last day and a half. Ms. Maxwell would welcome any relief.
Just days after Blanche's unusual July meeting with Maxwell, the convicted felon was transferred out of a low-security federal prison in Tallahassee to a minimum security facility in Texas. The move drew the ire of critics, Democrats, and Epstein survivors alike.
We were horrified to learn that she had been transferred to a prison camp.
It's one of my worst nightmares that she not only be transferred, but at the possibility that's very much going around that she might be pardoned.
And we certainly expect the Epstein survivors to continue speaking out. We saw it at that last press conference there. I've heard it in the conversations that I have had one-on-one with some of these survivors. And they are really disturbed by any possibility, Anderson, of Ghislaine Maxwell getting any kind of preferential treatment or any idea of leniency being afforded to her. And Anderson, the Epstein-Maxwell issue really has been sort of ready to bubble up when we are starting to see that now as the government is getting ready to reopen again, because remember, there is that discharge petition that is just lacking that one final signature, and we expect that Adelita Grijalva, whenever she is eventually sworn in, is going to provide that last signature to force a House vote on the issue of the Epstein files. And I am told, Anderson, finally, that some of these Epstein survivors are just waiting for the next opportunity to descend on Washington, D.C. again so that they can continue pressing this issue. Anderson.
MJ Lee, thanks very much.
Joining me now, family members of one of Epstein's victims, Virginia Giuffre, before her death in April. She wrote a book documenting what she endured and had dedicated herself to helping abuse survivors. Sky Roberts is Virginia Giuffre's brother, and Amanda Roberts is her sister-in-law. Thank you both for being here. I just have to get your thoughts on what you are hearing from Jamie Raskin about this whistleblower who is saying that she is receiving all kinds of special treatment now in the facility that she's in.
I think it makes us angry. I do want to praise Raskin and the whistleblower for coming forward and exposing what's really happening. I think we have to remember as constituents, this is what our tax dollars is funding. We are funding a child sex trafficker to be in a prison that she does not belong in. She belongs in a maximum security prison. Our tax dollars are waiting on her hand and foot, and it's quite shameful. It makes us angry. It's a slap in the face to every single survivor who came forward. And why is this happening? Why is this happening? We still don't understand why she's there. We were never given any answers as to why she was moved, what happened during those conversations with her. It just all still seems like an extreme cover-up. And it's scary to think that she may be on the doorsteps to freedom.
Sky, I'm curious what you think of the fact that the initial fury over the Epstein files not being released somehow resulted in Ghislaine Maxwell being moved to a more comfortable setting. Why do you think that is?
I think we really have to start questioning. That's an amazing question, because that's exactly what we need to be questioning, is why is she being moved to a minimum security prison after giving testimony in front of Todd Blanche? He should be summoned. He should be held to account to answer for those questions. It's simple. I think that we've prioritized putting power and money over survivors, and when is the government going to start helping them out? I mean, my sister would say it often, like, hey, guys, we could use a little bit of a hand here. We're carrying a lot of weight in terms of the names and the burden to come forward publicly and continue to talk about this. Like, help us out. You've only released 1% of the documents. So I think it's quite shameful. I mean, she doesn't deserve to be playing with puppies in prison and getting chef meals basically prepared for her and sent to her dorm. That's not what we should be doing to a convicted sex trafficking offender. I can tell you that. She was an active participant and physically abused many of these survivors, including my sister.
I think it makes us angry. I do want to praise Raskin and the whistleblower for coming forward and exposing what's really happening. I think we have to remember as constituents, this is what our tax dollars is funding. We are funding a child sex trafficker to be in a prison that she does not belong in. She belongs in a maximum security prison. Our tax dollars are waiting on her hand and foot, and it's quite shameful. It makes us angry. It's a slap in the face to every single survivor who came forward. And why is this happening? Why is this happening? We still don't understand why she's there. We were never given any answers as to why she was moved, what happened during those conversations with her. It just all still seems like an extreme cover-up. And it's scary to think that she may be on the doorsteps to freedom.
I think we really have to start questioning. That's an amazing question, because that's exactly what we need to be questioning, is why is she being moved to a minimum security prison after giving testimony in front of Todd Blanche? He should be summoned. He should be held to account to answer for those questions. It's simple. I think that we've prioritized putting power and money over survivors, and when is the government going to start helping them out? I mean, my sister would say it often, like, hey, guys, we could use a little bit of a hand here. We're carrying a lot of weight in terms of the names and the burden to come forward publicly and continue to talk about this. Like, help us out. You've only released 1% of the documents. So I think it's quite shameful. I mean, she doesn't deserve to be playing with puppies in prison and getting chef meals basically prepared for her and sent to her dorm. That's not what we should be doing to a convicted sex trafficking offender. I can tell you that. She was an
This is CNN Breaking News.
All right, we do have breaking news in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, minutes ago, literally, releasing emails that they say were written by Jeffrey Epstein that explicitly, specifically mentioned Donald Trump by name and in context that we really haven't heard before. Let's get right to Caitlin Collins, who's got this reporting. Caitlin, what are you learning?
Yeah, John, these are emails that show Jeffrey Epstein mentioning Donald Trump by name multiple times in private correspondence that he had with people, including Ghislaine Maxwell, obviously his longtime associate and accomplice, and also the author Michael Wolff, in a time span of about the last 15 years or so in these emails. Now, these are coming out from the House Oversight Committee. They had issued a bipartisan subpoena to Jeffrey Epstein's estate, John, as you know, earlier this year. And so they've gotten their hands on a trove of documents. And these are emails that included Jeffrey Epstein on them. They were sent either to him or from him that mention Donald Trump before he was in office and also while he was in office during his first term. And I want to walk you through these emails of what exactly we are reading in Jeffrey Epstein's own words in these emails that have been released by the House Oversight Committee. And in one of them, Jeffrey Epstein says, and I should note, Trump did not send or receive any of these messages. He's not a party to these emails, John, but these are emails from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. This is one from April 2nd, 2011. And in this email, Jeffrey Epstein writes to Ghislaine Maxwell and says, quote, "I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. There's a name that's redacted, which the House Oversight Committee has said is a victim of Jeffrey Epstein's. Obviously, we have not been able to independently confirm that because her name is redacted from this email. But they say redacted spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned, police chief, etc. I'm 75% there." Ghislaine Maxwell responds to that email, John, and says, quote, "I have been thinking about that." Now, there's no context for that message in this release of what we're getting. Obviously, this was a time span, and this was about 3 years after Jeffrey Epstein had accepted what is now known as that sweetheart deal that only got him a few months in prison, and something that came under a ton of scrutiny during Donald Trump's first term in office because of his then Labor Secretary Alex Acosta, who helped negotiate that plea deal, that sweetheart deal, for Jeffrey Epstein at the time. And so that's the context of this came about 3 years after he had negotiated that plea deal, John. And there's also other emails that have been released by the committee this morning, including between Jeffrey Epstein and Michael Wolff. People will remember Michael Wolff, of course, the author who wrote a book on the inner workings of Trump's West Wing back in 2018 during his first term. He is someone who has talked at length about his own correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein, published audio recordings of those conversations between the two of them. And in another email, and this seems to be a reference to Donald Trump saying that he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club. And Jeffrey Epstein writes to Michael Wolff and says, quote, Trump said he asked me to resign. And he adds, John, never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Now, again, we don't have the context of this email, but John, that comes as in recent months, we've heard President Trump himself and the White House say that Jeffrey Epstein was kicked out of Mar-a-Lago for being a creep. And Trump himself told reporters on Air Force One that he was trying to poach women, he and Ghislaine Maxwell, from the Mar-a-Lago spa. And that was why they had such a falling out and why he ultimately asked Jeffrey Epstein to leave the Mar-a-Lago club. Now, there's also a third email in here, John, and this is, again, in regards to Jeffrey Epstein and Michael Wolff. And Michael Wolff emails Jeffrey Epstein, and this is back in December 15th, 2015, so the height of the 2016 campaign, just to put that in perspective for you. And it was the day of a CNN Republican primary debate. And Michael Wolff says, quote, I hear that CNN is planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in a scrum afterwards. And Epstein wrote, if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? Michael Wolff responded at length, John. I'll summarize it, but he said in regards to Trump, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him generating a debt. Now, I'll note, John, we looked at the transcript of that CNN debate from December 2015. There's no mention of Jeffrey Epstein in there. And of course, as I mentioned, Donald Trump himself is not a party to these emails. But what this shows is Jeffrey Epstein mentioning Donald Trump by name multiple times at a moment here in Washington when their relationship has come under incredibly intense scrutiny, John.
Ghislaine, as you mentioned multiple times, we just don't have the context surrounding any of these emails. But that first email you read, the language absolutely jumps out to me. This is April 2nd, 2011. Epstein writes to Ghislaine Maxwell, I want you to realize the dog that hasn't barked is Trump, blank. And blank here is one of the alleged victims of Jeffrey Epstein. A victim spent hours at my house with him being Trump. He has never once been mentioned. Now, again, we don't have the context surrounding that, Caitlin, but this kind of language from Jeffrey Epstein himself, how often has Donald Trump, what has Donald Trump said about contact he may have had or time he may have allegedly spent with some of Epstein's alleged victims?
Yeah, and John, just to be clear, the woman, the person whose name is redacted here was redacted by the House Oversight Committee before they put this out. That has been a huge point of focus as people have demanded the release of these documents, is to be able to protect the survivors and the victims. We have not been able to independently verify who this person is. The committee is the one doing the redacting here. But obviously he is referencing someone who Jeffrey Epstein says in this email from 2011 that spent time with Donald Trump at his house. And so we've asked the White House for comment on this morning. Obviously, these are emails that predate his time in office this term. They span about 15 years, this correspondence that's being released. And Trump has denied that he knew anything about what Jeffrey Epstein was doing and the sex trafficking of young women. And he said that he wasn't aware of that at the time. And obviously, Trump himself has not been accused of any wrongdoing. It's very important that we make that clear here, John. But of course, the question has been when it comes to regards to the Justice Department and what they've released about what they know. And Adelita Grijalva is being sworn in today. She's the new House Democrat from Arizona, and she's expected to be that 218th signature. And so the pressure has been building on not just Democrats, but Republicans here in Washington to release more information about what the Justice Department has. And so looking at that email, obviously, will likely only increase that pressure to do so. And you're right, John, we don't know the context of that. But obviously you can read Jeffrey Epstein's words in and of itself and take away obviously what you will from that.
Oh yeah, it begs many questions to be asked, perhaps to the president or the White House. You've already put this to them. Much more on this ahead. Caitlin Collins,
and
thank you
say,
so
John,
much. Oh, please.
I just want to say, because obviously, you know, we're breaking this morning. We did get a comment from Michael Wolff himself on this. I reached out to him to ask. for any context on these emails, for anything from him. And he said, quote, I don't quite remember the context, but he says, I was engaged then in an in-depth conversation with Epstein about his relationship with Trump, and this seems to be part of that conversation. We have not yet gotten a comment from the White House. Obviously, they were going through these emails themselves this morning, and we will let you know what they